Hey everybody, this is Grace, and I have some notes here. I started writing this story about the ranches, and I started this story, oh my goodness, I don't know how many years ago. Could have been in the late 19s, I don't know. But this one, I had written a bunch of notes. It's funny because one of them, I wrote the date on, I wrote the date on all these, but one of them I wrote the date as, well, today is October 10th, 2025. I wrote the date on this one as August 25th, 2029. Okie dokie. Okay, so let's try to make some sense of my notes. I'm plowing through this stuff, or I'm trying to. Some of these old notes. Okay, and it's about the ranches. This is under one huge roof. This was done on, okay, I could be wrong, because the ink stopped or something, but it looked like only part of it. Maybe it was 9/18/21, or was 7/18/21, because right there at the top where it would have that, the ink didn't work for some reason. That is so weird. But anyway, oh boy. Let's see, under one roof, one huge roof, Jim moved Meg and Faith with their family into the XYZ ranch. It's Mark's ranch. Boy, that's an old story, man. Caitlin and her family moved there too. Okay. The ranch hands are all descendants. And they live in Victorson County, Texas. There, they kept a tradition since the original settlers that were from really wealthy families came there, settled, and eventually it became a whole. They bought all the property. Lots and lots of property in Texas from, like I said, generations ago, back when it was cheap and not settled, and they settled it. They had their servants, as they called them, and everybody that started. Everybody who's a descendant of any of those can still buy property there in the county, buy a house, buy property, whatever. But anybody who isn't a descendant can't. And it's got a very interesting, they don't do anything against the law, but they really flirt with it. And, because of what was going on in 2020, and then there was a lot of threats and some really weird, it was kind of like more from, could have been outsiders. They weren't certain, but they were pretty certain it wasn't outsiders. Instead, it was people from the one place in the whole county, Victorson County, is where from the settlers on, where they would put anybody who became an outlaw, anybody who needed to serve time in jail. It was way far away from where they first started settlement. But within the county, and nobody wanted to do that. So, but eventually it became a place, and anybody who did something really wrong would get sent there with their whole family. Things started changing, of course, over the generations and the decades. But it kept its name called the Outlaws, and because of its rich history, as they felt. But that was the bad place, and that was where some people were really, really big outlaws. And within the county, but see, the county itself, they're good, decent people, most of them. It's real wealthy. They're in high tech, they're in finance, they're in law enforcement of any kind. They're just very wealthy, and they closed it down in 2020, locked it down, and they built a perimeter around the whole county, started still doing, and built new homes. People who had moved out of the county came back because they had an inheritance. They wanted to, some of them just wanted to be back because they thought in 2020, they wanted to be where their investments were. They wanted to be, to secure their homes, and they stayed. Many of them stayed. Anyway, but during this time, something was going on. There was weird threats, and to people who were, it's kind of chilly, to people who were like Jim. Well, Jim had the enforcement. He ran that. Meg and Faith and her family and other people, they were all moved to where the central location so people could watch them, and then law enforcement like Caitlin and her family. I think Caitlin is Faith's daughter, an adult. And, I mean, everybody was just moved there for security reasons. There were a lot of people who were, it was all in needs to know. Not everybody knew that everybody was part of it, like part of an enforcement, but everybody who was like a descendant, and then it started being everybody who was in tech, high tech. They started taking classes, and they all had to take classes for the descendants, where at any time they could be part of law enforcement. And they took the classes starting when they were young. Okay, anyway, that's a little history. But let's see, let me get back to these notes. But you know, they all had to go under this, and they were okay. You know, they're from the county. They know how it works. The elders, by the way, of the county basically run the county, and everybody knows that is when they get to that age, they'll have that choice if they want to run the county. So they don't complain. Plus, life is really good, except for the outlaws. And another catty corner to the outlaws' town, far across this massive county, is a place they call a hippie town, which you can figure out. And people are just different. They're just different. That's all. All kinds of difference. Anyway, get back to this now. Okay, so Mark had the ranch. He runs it and all this, and they put everybody there, and they're all happy. And the ranch hands are actually descendants, and the people who are descendants, they have plenty of money. They have all this inheritance and everything. So, but they do this. They become like ranch hands for a while, or they do something that is, you know, to how you say, to keep active, to give back. You know, like being a ranch hand. You know, some of them are all of that. They want to be trained, so to be a ranch hand. So the people, they all, like, some of them had stayed there, visited there. It's very interesting, really. And I wrote that about all workers were trained by the enforcement, and their descendants, therefore, they all know the XYZ. It's called XYZ Ranch. Other members are on surrounding ranches. Sometimes I don't know about my notes, seriously. And the elders had their large buildings around them. Some stayed in the Dude Ranch, which is a huge house, you know. And all ranches were given letters such as ABC. All not ranches. Yeah, it is. All ranches. Like, they had these big, huge ranches, and they were all given, like, ABC, DEF, and like that. And then the elders got split up in 2020, and they went to these dude ranches, and they became those elders. They called them ABC elders, DEF elders, and so on. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, like that. And at the end of the alphabet was VW. But anyway, they had different jobs that they would do for the county, and it was about time that they did split them up from just the XYZs, because they had so many things that they added more elders, and that the age was less than what it had been in the past, and it was great for the great for the from the county. My goodness. Okay, and I basically said that because of the situation, there was this weird stuff, you know, like I mentioned, weird threats and such. Nobody had visitors. It was all ran by the county people such as above, you know, the people who were descendants, and so they knew who they were. They knew them. And some families were called in to help, you know, who knew the job. So that was okay. And then I have one. Like I said, I don't know if it was written before or after now, because it's the same thing. It actually has the 9. So 9/7 of 21 is when I wrote it. And it was about the mayor's Benny, who's 40, and Jonathan, who's 40, and their ex-wives. And this was all part of this. Oh my goodness. And it says, not long after these two, had married, their mayors had married their wives around 15 years ago. Their wives simply left them. Okay? They just left them. And they left divorce papers and notes stating that they were in love with us, with one another. So they wanted divorces. They were never to be seen or heard from again. And 15 years ago, they gave them divorces. After then, neither, these two mayors wanted anything to do with women. That was it. They had enough. It was too crushing to their egos. Okay. Now let's see. They turned to golf and tennis at the country club, and some flirting with women to keep up with the image of just that of liking women. So, and that's all I had written. I don't know, really. I'm trying to clean out these, these old notes that I have so many years. I've been in this really, we're here in Texas. It's October the 10th, but it's summertime weather still. And I feel like I'm kind of doing spring cleaning. But these notes, I mean, my goodness, some of them are so old. And I realized, I'd started just doing a little here and there. That wasn't exactly going to work, because when stuff was written in 2021 about that time, about what was going on there, then, and then if I try to do what's going on now, that there's too much storyline that's going to get all confusing. But I'm doing a little of it, though. Anyway, it's getting dark, so I'm going to go in, but I'm going to wrap this up. At least I got through some of it. I'll talk to you on another video. Bye.